Welcome everybody. Blessed are those that visit this channel and enjoy the content here.
Right, I'm here for another episode of Talk to Thorin. This one's going to be with ropz. That's right, Talk to Thorin, not Reflections. If you want to get on reflections, mate, fuck around and win a major, become a legend or something. You're still young in your career. Not really just a message to ropz, it's a message to anyone in the community who's a pro player now. So, okay, ropz, let's start out here, mate. I've seen some of the interviews you've done in the past. A lot of them were quite pedestrian. They were like sort of like the interviews people do when they're young in their career. People ask you all the same stupid questions. When did you start playing Counter-Strike? Wow, you were young when you joined Mousesports. Like all the obvious shit that we've all gotten out of the way. So I'm going to skip past most of that. And what I want to know is this, is when you were in Face It and playing in FPL and people like got your attention, you know, you got people's attention rather with your play and all the rest of it. One of the things I think's really misunderstood is people make it sound like you're one of these people, like BMAS and your team, Brokey, where the way they got their attention was they were just mad fraggers. Like they just had good aim and they were fragging everyone. Like that is not the reason you got attention. Like the reason you got attention is because people thought you cheated because you just won every fucking clutch and then you did that weird thing where you like looked at the second monitor, or you're just really good at cheating and you just have your second monitor to cheat on over there. Whatever it was you were doing, like it was like in theory it was like basically the premise they couldn't believe, as far as I can tell, ropz, is that essentially, if you don't cheat, you were just really good in clutch scenarios, which a young player, that's normally the area they're terrible in. So what would you say about this aspect? Because it wasn't just like raw aim. No one was saying you were like the maddest fragger, right?
Yeah, a very good place to start. Well, I've always considered myself as a smart person in that sense, and I think that translates to how I play CS. And it's true. The reason I did get called out because I was making, to what it seems to those pros, unreasonable plays and unreasonable clutches and things I shouldn't do, just outplaying them in general, and that's what caught their eye, and it made them think I was cheating, and it's tough to defend myself in that position, since obviously I have no experience, I have no history. And somehow I'm still outperforming these experienced players in areas which I shouldn't. So it was a tough time.
How, if you just were to give some sort of insight into your mentality, like how do you think you developed that skill? Because as I say, usually, even if someone's a really skilled player, usually that's like sort of the last area of their game they master. It's one of the reasons why I would give a great example right now is Shox in Vitality. I don't think as an individual player, he's anywhere near the best like he used to be. But even in whatever form he's in now, he'll always win some ridiculous clutches because he just has that, like he's mastered that area of the game. There must be something about whatever mode his brain switches into when he's in a clutch scenario. He's just fantastic at figuring it out. And one of the things I've found from talking to people over the years where that's their strength is it's not like a fan might think. Like you couldn't pause the video, as it were, and be like, right, well, here's what I could do. Like the guy could be over there, and then I'm going to think. You're not thinking like that. You're not like consciously thinking of it. It's just like a feel, right? So is this something? Were you always good at this in CS? Is there some way you trained it? Is there something you've actively trained to become good in this area?
I don't think I've ever actually trained it. Maybe I think it's something like how to put it. Just how you approach CS in general. Like a lot of the players, I mean, Flusha comes first to mind. They take like every advantage they can, and they don't throw it away. You know, some of the players are like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna go in and just headshot this guy, or just, you know, go for the confidence play. But some of the players, they always keep the advantage they have, and they keep searching for new ones. And I think these kinds of players, those are similar to me, and why I was playing so well. I wasn't doing any stupid plays. Like even the best players out there, they do some of the stupid plays. Like they probably win those situations because they're so good, but it's still not the best play in that scenario, perhaps. And I think that's how you become a player like that. That you just stick to your advantages and keep searching for new ones, and win the plays off of that.
When you came into actual pro play for Mousesports, was it a different world in that regard? Because obviously this aspect, actually, it felt like it took you a couple of years to get really comfortable in this regard. You were like a skilled player when you came in, but is there something different about pro play compared to FPL in that sense?
Well, a pro player is a completely different scenario. Yeah. it was like a whole new world for me when I joined. Luckily for me, Mouz was searching for a player like me, and I really fit into their picture back then. They needed like a player who was doing stuff alone, and like I'm the kind of a player who is playing alone in most of the spots and just doing his own thing, and that's what they wanted me to do. Just do your own thing, try your best, and it really worked out because that was what I was really good at.
That first Mousesports lineup you came into, I'm sure most fans aren't going to remember because they probably remember that the first results were the one with Oscar and Sonni and that one. But it was actually the one you came into where it was like the leftovers of the Nico Sports days. It was where it had like Dennis and Lowell and those guys. Most of them obviously aren't at tier 1 anymore. Right? In this team, I actually thought it was a pretty good example of a team to like try you out in because basically it didn't really matter if that team didn't have that great results. Like it wasn't like a bunch of the top players. So it was like a good place to learn. But it looked like a bit of a mess as an actual team though. Like I know some of those players can be like solid role players, but I'm not sure that team had enough firepower. Like what was the actual, I know you're only with that lineup for a brief amount of time. What was the initial period like in Mouse?
The initial period, well, it was a whole new experience for me, but regarding the team, then yeah, it was kind of a mess. Obviously, they lost Nico, and then everyone put the pressure on me to replace Nico, but I didn't feel that pressure. Everyone is asking me that question if I ever felt it, but I didn't ever take it that way, and I knew that the team was going in a whole new direction since losing Nico, and like that's like the team is completely different when you lose a player like that, and I didn't feel that pressure because of that fact. Um, I think Oscar was well an amazing operator back then, and he was definitely the star of the team back then, and uh, Chris had some troubles leading in the start, I think, but together with LMBT, they kind of figured it out, and we got off to a pretty good start, I would say. Um, but in terms of everything else, I think the team was at a point where they wanted to replace the other players. Also, like Oscar had some replacements in mind already, and I think some of the other members already were coming to end. So I think there was more changes coming, as it were.
Right, when you were in this team, and then obviously you made the swap where you got in Sonni from Penta, you made this like better lineup basically. It's actually the one who people remember. Eventually, the next year you went as high as like number 2 in the rankings. You're winning events. Right, it actually is crazy because early on you had that Mykonos event where you beat Virtus Pro and you beat Team Liquid, and you were looking really, really strong. But it was a few more months before you really kicked into this period where you were like an elite team. So, like, what do you think the strengths of this team were, and why did it take, like, even though it had the first big event, why did it take a little bit more sort of time to cycle up to the peak level?
It's very interesting, actually. I have no idea how that came to be. Winning Mykonos, that was very surprising. Um, Obviously, first like kind of a big win for myself, and then like I think for all of the other guys also. So I think winning that tournament somehow was boosted us mentally and made us realize that okay, we can actually do this. I mean, shortly after we went to the next tournament and came last, but
Yes, sure.
I think still that somehow boosted us mentally and made us realize, yeah, that we're someone else than just the playoff team that we are able to be, and I think the players we had, um, it did reflect in the server that we have the skills, what it takes, but it was never something that was going to last forever. It felt like, and yeah, and then I think we started going more to playoffs, and then 2018 came around. We won some tournaments, um, but in the end, yeah, I don't know if it was something that we felt like it's gonna last forever.
Okay. What about this then? Since that was like both the lineups you were in initially in Mousesports were also like FaZe type crazy amounts of nationalities, just people from all different countries trying to communicate in second language English, and obviously different cultures, different playing teams they've been in the past, like everything. I always think those teams are really tricky. So in my opinion, you either need an amazing in-game leader, like you need to have like Karrigan or someone on that level, or you need a great coach. So in this team, like you say, Chris J was like easing into becoming an in-game leader. And for me, it was 2018 when he really sort of kicked into gear and got really good in that. So I actually want to ask a bit about LMBT, because I know this guy from 1.6 when he was just a Ukrainian in-game leader. And I know at the moment, sadly, in the last month or so, he's been doing a pretty good job making himself look like an idiot with all this stupid shit with the fucking FaZe team and all that. But well, obviously, I've seen him as someone where he certainly knows how to structure a team and he understands certain key concepts in the game. So what's it been like working with him when he was your coach?
Working with LMBT was definitely like having the both sides of the coin. He definitely obviously has the experience, and he's a very nice guy. Like outside of the server, he has a family himself, and he knows how to talk to people and how to approach whenever there's a problem. But also, he was never like that much of like a supportive coach. He was more like a very tactical in that sense. So we never had like anything like good mental boost from him ever, or like this coach is hyping behind you and stuff like that.
Sure.
I don't think we ever had that, and I think that was something we missed a lot during those times. Having to play with some of the coaches now, like obviously Regin was one of those like that, and now Mythar is also like that. That kind of just gives you emotional boost in that sense when you're playing, and gives you that emotional and confidence and stuff like that. And that was something we were missing a lot. But having worked with the Chris and the LMDT, they I think they were really good together, like kind of tactically. But yeah, as I said, we came into a lot of conflicts in that regard also, because at one point, I think it was like FaZe Major when we went out last, and that was actually a tournament where Sonni was calling, because we felt like we were kind of falling behind in that regard with Chris, and Sonni took over, but it didn't show in the tournament, and we went out last. And then we got snacks, I think. No, that was already when we had snacks. It was really weird that time when we switched to Sonni as a calling. I mean, Sonni obviously was like a player who was taking was a part of taking map control with in the team, and he had like a very vocal voice, like almost pretty
It's like
much
a good secondary caller, right?
yeah, like, pretty much like a secondary
Yeah.
caller, saying what we do mid round and stuff like that. And since he was so vocal in that, and that's why he took over during that time.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, what about this? You've got to explain Oscar to people, because people always think I overhype him, right? Because I always said just what you just said earlier. For me, he was clearly the best player in the Mousesports team, and if he was at his peak level, that's pretty much when you won all the big matches and all the big tournaments. Like that was when it was awesome. But I also understand why fans will think I'm overrating him, because he definitely has tournaments and matches where he looks like he's just not mentally there, like he's just out of the game. He even plays like super passive, doesn't try to warp. So what I want to ask is this, right? From what I know about this guy, because he comes from such a unique background, remember, he's way older than most pros because he used to play 1.6 forever and he didn't get his chance to be a true pro. And then he's playing in this weird mixed nationality team, but except for Chris J, no one's even vaguely near his age. Everyone else is a younger guy from the modern generation. And just socially, he's not like what in English we'd call a social butterfly. Like, he's a bit of a weird guy. It's just how he is. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just who he is. But as a result, as a pro, I've heard over the years, he's a guy where it's like, a lot of the superstars, like Nico, Simple, these guys, it's like they'll just tell you what they want. They'll say, like, give me this now, like, get out my way. Like, they have that sort of, like, forceful mentality. I've heard Oscar's more like, he's like some riddle you have to sort of unravel. You have to figure out what the fuck do we have to do to get Oscar going in this game, or what do we do in this sense? Like, I've heard actually people like Chris J and Stickle were kind of like key to open him up in that sense. So what was it like to play with this guy as a teammate?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he is was sometimes a riddle, but in private when you talk to him, he'll obviously tell you what's wrong and stuff like that. But I think what went wrong with him is that whatever he had going on in his personal life, and whatever problems we had with the team, that made him in the end just lose motivation and not put in enough hours, I feel like. Which can happen sometimes, but for him that was a really like a defining moment, I felt like, and it kind of made us go separate ways. And he was also in like kind of in crossroads with the Mouse organization back then, so like yeah, he just lost motivation because of all those problems, and I think he didn't just play enough, and then whatever happened was history. That's he really didn't work out in the end anymore.
Right. What about the same kind of a question about Sonni? Because the problem is now people who only watched the game the last year and a half are going to think he's rubbish because of all the rubbish period with Ents, and he was on the bench for so long before he got into the team. And so basically his prime was about 2 years ago now. That's when he was at his best. As you say, to me it was always obvious he was doing some sort of secondary calling, because you just look at his role and then you look at the fact that even though he's finished, he's a fairly actually vocal guy. Like, he's not one of those guys who just sits saying nothing. Like, what is Sonni at best at? What's his strength, and how should he be used in a team?
Yeah, coming to Sonni again, well, as was mentioned before, he's definitely very strong at taking map control in the game, having a vocal voice, directing and guiding the team on what we do, or giving suggestions and stuff like that. That's his very strong part, I would say. Outside the server, obviously, I was also a very good friend to him. Like, probably one of my best friends, to be honest. In terms of like in the CS landscape, I was like a roommate with him for the whole time I was in Mousesports, and we had a very long friendship, and it's still very healthy, and I'm happy to say that. He also guided me, I would say, like in terms of how to keep myself together once we're going through this rough times, like, I don't know, the last place at the major and stuff like that. Just like keep on playing and like just forget it, put in the hours, it's gonna work out. And I think he's been a very strong leadership role in my own career here.
Right, in the early days of this lineup, when you were getting the success, you were getting the top places, you were going to like the final of ECS, etc., and obviously at the major, the obvious team that stood in your way was FaZe Clan. And let's face it, at the time, FaZe Clan was like the bigger brother version of Mouse. Like, people used to joke it was like Superior Mousesports or whatever, because like they also were all the nationalities, but they were the superstars and they were the players that don't need to learn the game. They're already people who've been legendary players. Like, what was tough about playing FaZe Clan?
Well, playing FaZe Clan in 2017 and 2018, I guess the obvious thing was that they didn't really care. Wherever you went, they're gonna hit the headshot on you. They were on fire mostly during those times, and it always showed in the server. But other than that, I think, well, them having Karrigan, also like a very tactical leader in that sense, kind of made them, I guess, outplay us. I would say we as a team were never very tactical. We always we're kind of like, okay, we just go there and we see what happens. Like, we take this map control of the map, and or area, should I say, and then we just try to see if we get an entry or stuff like that. We never really had a strict plan on the way we played CS back in 2018. We just kind of went with the flow and see what happened, and we were just good at picking the enemy team apart one by one. But I felt like the other teams, maybe like FaZe, they had also like a tactical approach, and it just kind of showed that they were like a different team in terms of play style, and they could figure us out. So I think that might have been the reason.
Right, when I said before, the first Mousesports you join even makes sense as the kind of team you'd try, like a guy who's never played Pro CS. Like, no expectations, like, there's not the best players, so they're not all going to demand you are the best. Yeah, I agree, maybe replacing Nico, those are big shoes to fill, but even so, people are going to understand you're not going to be Nico. But the fact that, like, in less than a year in Mousesports was when you won this Star Series tournament, which was a big-time tournament, like, all the best teams basically attended it. It was the one where it was, like, Swiss system, full best of threes the whole way, and then in the final, where you beat the performance that I actually think from Simple might be like the best performance on LAN I've ever seen in my life. Like, where he was just like 40 bombing, 30 bombing every game, like he just kills everyone. Like, this must have been a pretty surreal experience to win a massive tournament like that, just so young in your career.
Yeah, for sure. That was a tournament that it was hard to believe we won. It was also the time when Cloud9 was the major champion, and we also beat them, so it was like kind of unbelievable. I think we beat Cloud9 to go to the playoffs in that event, and so it was a very tough event because obviously, yeah, best of three Swiss system, like all the top teams there. It was very surprising we came out on top. I guess we all must have had a good event in terms of like individual plays, and we came on top. And regarding the final, then yeah, Simple in that tournament, I actually remember Kibitz like having a one-on-one duel with Simple. Like, you know that if you're gonna miss one bullet, like it's over. Like you're already dead basically. Like he's just gonna flick and headshot you, and that was like a match that I'll remember for a while, I guess, since Simple was playing so well. But I guess as a team we played better, and I'm happy to won that tournament.
So as you referenced earlier, later on in the year, when the team's results went down again, I mean, it sounds like based on the fact you were like testing out other in-game leaders, obviously you were trying all these different things to get the lineup to work. The big move that happened, and obviously Mouse isn't a team famous for doing like enormous signings at that point in time as an organisation. It's more like they just pick up like people who were decent. You made a big signing though, because the team brought in Snacks, who obviously was like a legend of the game, formerly one of the best players in the world, only like, let's say like a year and a half before, right? How would you actually evaluate that period? Because listen, the New York win, that's a big title. Okay, great. There was a couple of good placings, but like, would you say did the experiment of bringing Snacks work overall in your opinion?
Overall, I would say no, but I think having won a tournament, it kind of justifies the price tag that he had on his name in that time. We know that Mouse did buy him out, and they spent some money on that, and they got the return from the New York win. But going back to the signing, then well, to approach the signing, then the idea was that okay, we want some firepower on the team, and Snacks for Stico, that was an okay replacement, and it kind of looked good on paper. But well, obviously it didn't work out as history shows, and we went back to Stico in the end. But I guess the overall signing, to get like my POV, then already said in this interview, like I was always the guy who was on his own, just do your own thing. I was never really in conversations about like about the lineup, about the future of the lineup. Obviously I was, but I was never giving ideas or
Okay.
giving any names like who to replace or who to get, because I I, I was still like kind of almost in the first year of my pro experience, and I didn't even have any connections back then. Like I only talked to my own teammates pretty much.
Sure.
So the guys came to me, and I guess I was like the kind of a third wheel in that sense that they just come up with a plan. They asked me, like I just say, yeah, go for it. Like I trust you guys. We've had some good results together so far, so I just trust you guys and we do it. So um, I think it was okay on paper, but it didn't really work out, as I said, and I think Snacks himself had problems on the way we used him as a player, and like personally he couldn't continue like that way we used him. basically he was almost like a support player, and he didn't really get to the star roles he wanted. But I mean, we tried as hard as we could, but he didn't. He couldn't really work with it. So we had to go separate ways, and the best thing to do from there was just to get Stico back and continue where we left off.
Right, there was a famous interview that Sonni did before you got Stico back and during the snacks period that everyone remembers, because in it he gave this piece of information where he said that it wasn't sort of until Stico left the team that he realised that how much Stico would actually like be a vital part of the comms. Like apparently when he was dead, he would comm for other people if he saw they weren't saying anything. Like this is, I don't want to overblow this storyline and make it like that was the whole issue, but I wanted to know basically, like, do you have similar thoughts? Because one thing I've learned over the years is, like, I'll give you another example. A lot of people think MSL's a really overrated in-game leader, right? And they're like, oh, he's not doing anything. But I did a show once with Valde where I just asked him after MSL had left the team and Valde became the in-game leader. I said, like, what did you think of MSL as a leader? And he basically just told me, like, oh, I actually didn't know that MSL had a system until he left the team. And then I was like, what the fuck do we do now? Like, what is our approach to the game? I just learned in that moment, like, sort of what he brought. So did this Stico experience, did it like teach you some lesson about the way teams are structured, or who does what, or how you make a successful squad, basically?
Yeah, it could be. Like to start off, like all of the like stuff like talking while you're dead and all that stuff. That's like very a very common thing in CS. Like when you die, you're still a part of the round, and you give all the information you can, and that goes to any player. But I think what happened there, that we got rid of the kind of a very important part of the foundation of the team, like I would say maybe like a mental foundation of the team. He was always like a very positive element to the team. He knew how to take criticism. He knew how to solve the problems. He knew how to respond to the team. Like he was a very nice guy, obviously, and I mean, getting rid of that is gonna hurt the team, because not having that is gonna cause more internal issues and more conflicts and stuff like that. So I think he was a very big part of the foundation we had of the team, and it was important to keep it in the lineup.
As we referenced earlier, you did get that big ESL New York win, where if people don't remember, Astralis wasn't at the tournament because Astralis chose to go to one of those stupid blasts where like no one else was there in fucking Turkey and go like, oh look, we won, we're amazing. Meanwhile, all the other good teams went to this ESL New York. So aside from Astralis, who yes was number one, all the other good teams were there. Na'Vi was there, you were there, Team Liquid was there, FaZe Clan was there. Everyone, pretty much all the top teams basically were at this event. So it was a stacked event. And if people don't remember, this is another final where even though you guys won, like the storyline, you know, if this was a movie, you guys wouldn't win it. Like Team Liquid was supposed to win that because obviously they lost all those finals to Astralis. And so their excuse was, if we played anyone except Astralis, of course we'd win because we're number two. So this year, like, must be crazy in that regard. Because it's like even the tournaments you won, it's like you came in as the underdog and you just stole it from the guys who thought it was their time, right?
Yeah, that was an experience and a half. I mean, the tournament prior to that, it was the major. We went out last, going out 0-3 in a major. Then next tournament, win a big event, and that was something. It was actually also the tournament I planned to get my family to watch the tournament, which I did, and winning that tournament in front of your family is a magical moment. I can't describe that feeling. But yeah, going to the tournament, then we tried to keep ourselves together. It was very tough to go to the major prior to that, but we kept saying to each other that, fuck it, we'll win the next tournament. It is what it is, and somehow it happened. I think I was actually having a pretty rough tournament myself, and the other guys were making sick plays. I remember Oscar clutched a 1-on-3 in the semifinals against NRG. It was at the time, and that was a big moment. I felt like that, okay, we're actually gonna win this tournament, and I think everyone stepped up from the major back then, and we actually showed very nice individual plays to win the tournament, which I feel like that's how we won the tournaments with Mouse back then. Like we never really, I don't know if we played good as a team, but we just stepped that up as players, and we just kind of destroyed everyone, despite the fact that we didn't even have that much of a tactical approach.
When you described there, like the sorts of roles and the way you envisioned yourself as a player in this Mousesports team, the trouble with having that kind of a role is it's really hard to not only be the best player, because if you're playing solo or you're playing like a tough spot to hold, it's also going to mean that even if you play awesome, sometimes you won't win. Like I saw this from Valde at this last tournament of Flashpoint 2, where he was playing all the like tough like anchor spots and stuff. And even if he got 2 kills, like, you know, maybe they just go to the other side and just win the round. So in this time, like, was it a conscious choice to take this role? Was it the coach's decision? Like, was it harder at the time with Oscar, with Sonni? Was there not as much space for ropz to be like a star player?
I think it's no, it's not true, because I actually, throughout all of the time I've been in Mousesports, my roles have actually never changed, except for like maybe the last year, for a few things on a few maps. But in general, throughout almost the 4 years I've been here, I've always been in the same roles, the same guy, the same plays I've been doing, and yeah, I don't think anything's changed in that regard. Maybe it was just maybe a poor individual time for myself, but I felt like yeah, nothing changed in those terms.
Right, when you got Karrigan into the team, who obviously is like a super decorated player, and let's face it, like the past teams he'd been in were way better than Mousesports. Like he's been in Astralis essentially, he's been in fucking obviously FaZe Clan, like massive teams in the world. The first sort of, I'm going to say like 7 or 8 months were kind of a bit meh in terms of the results. You know, they were okay, but they weren't even as good as the Mousesports the year before. Sure, the year was more competitive maybe, but you know, this wasn't actually what people expected from a Karrigan team. Normally his teams are awesome the first 6 months. That's where they just go immediately to a top level. So was it actually underwhelming the first period with him? What was it? What do you think was causing him issues figuring out the puzzle?
I know the first period was definitely like average, below average, pretty much. Like kind of like probably what the public expected us to be. Kind of like the playoff team, go to the playoffs, then go out, pretty much. Well, it was tough. We just kept going to the playoffs. We went out. We tried to figure out what the problem is. Well, in the end, I think everyone knows that Karrigan he made some role changes with Chris and Frozen, but I think it could be said that maybe we missed some experience, even though that we have players like Karrigan and Chris J. We still kind of need perhaps maybe another voice in the team, and I think in time I started to be that person who kind of stepped up and be more vocal and give the team another stable corner to fall back on, and I think that's will also help the team advance to the next level.
As you say there, obviously, like people have heard about some of the changes, and like another famous one that they referenced, I know Raging talked about this as well, was that like, the one there where they changed your CT position on Mirage, where instead of being like on the ramp A, you were like the connector guy, right? I wanted to ask about that because that's one area where I know a lot of players think coaches are like overrated and, you know, what, like just people who watch demos or whatever. But one area I think in-game leaders and coaches sometimes have amazing impact is sometimes they can see for the player how he could be more effective in a different area than the player maybe feels himself. Like maybe he thinks this is my best spot. This is the best thing for me. It's how I'm going to perform best. Was there some of this in this change?
That was definitely something the coach came up with, and he had very good reason to do so. Obviously, he sees that me being like one of the top 10 players in the world, I'm better off in a position where I can do more damage, I can have more impact. Having a position on Mirage A side, for example, that's like a position where at best you get 1 kill and you get refragged, or you fall back and you play retake and stuff like that. But in a position like Mirage connector, you can have a lot of impacts in communications, in fracking output, in in terms of like everything, like you basically take control of the whole game there in that position, and that's why he thought that it would make sense to put me there, and well, obviously I agreed, but I was also thinking about the fact that if it's a good idea, because that's well, I've played the same positions as I said, like for 3 to 4 years. Wouldn't I be just better off staying in the current position, since I actually don't have any experience in connector, Mirage, and I would have to learn a lot and watch a lot of
Sure.
demos, and it's gonna take a lot of time. Basically, what was my point? That it's gonna take time to figure out how do I play the best in that position. But I trusted the coach at the time, and which I obviously still do. Not
Yeah, sure.
not saying that that the cheating allegations or whatever happened change that fact, but I trusted the decision and I went with it, and I think it was a nice change of style for me. I get to learn something about myself if I'm able to do something like that, and it's just kind of also, I guess, boosted my motivation, since I had to put in the hours to learn the position.
Right, I wanted to ask you what it's like to play in your team specifically under Karrigan, because he's a person where I feel like he's been really misunderstood by the community, because they obviously know him best for his time in FaZe Clan. And when you've got superstar players like that, I mean, what I know about Karrigan is this: he adapts what he's going to do to what his team is. Like, he thinks of what tools he's got, and then he works based on that. He doesn't just impose everything himself. So I know when he had superstars like Rain, Nico, Guardian, his logic was more like, right, I've just got to get them into a favourable situation so they win their aim duels, you get in the bomb site, and then they do the rest. Like, they're all veterans, you know. So people think naively that meme of like Nico go kill is actually like how Karrigan is a leader, and they think because I've described FaZe as a loose team that means he just doesn't have any tactics. But as you said earlier, he clearly is a tactical thinker, right? He's a guy who has like a vision for the game. So what has he been like in Mousesports?
Karrigan has so much experience that I feel like he can get your team out of any mid-round situation, and that's what he is the best in the world at. I think, in my opinion, his ability to call mid-rounds is incredible, and that's basically how we win most of the rounds. It's just him taking over in the rounds, giving some micromanagement, and just getting us out of the situation, basically. Like, obviously we start out with the default or with a set strat or something like that, but in those mid-round calls, that's where he strives, and that's where he shows that he's the better leader than the other team's leader. And playing under a guy like that is obviously gonna impact especially the younger players, like pretty much the core we had now with the Walkik, Frozen, and me, and now Bimas also. And we kind of all learn from that, and we learn to play CS in the correct way, I would say. Like, we don't really do any of those stupid plays or stuff like that. Like, you really start to see how the game is supposed to be played, and yeah, that's very impactful from him.
Right, to have Walkik as a teammate must be like the polar opposite to when you had Oscar as your AWP, because like Walkik is the guy who's just like, bro, give me the AWP, get the fuck out of my way. It's like that's like him on T side does too. So it feels like he's also a contrast to you. You know, you're a little bit more quiet, a little more cerebral. You like to try and play the smart angles. Walkik's whole shit is like, I'm just going to shoot him first, right?
Yeah, Walkik and me are like two different worlds colliding. I mean, I was also a roommate with him, and it was very fun to get to know him. But in terms of like playing in game, then yeah, it's just like two worlds colliding. Like, you see me as a very passive guy, but this guy is rushing with AWP, is going in all the angles, and he actually wins those duels. Like, we're like two of the best players in their own worlds, so. It was a very interesting scenario in the team, and you could it was pointed out in the team that you could see that when me and him are in a clutch, you can see that it doesn't really work together.
Sure.
But I still feel like I could have I could adapt, and it was possible, and it was nothing like it's not gonna work because he's so aggressive. That's not the reason in the end why the decision was made. But it was just funny to see how like the two separate play styles are just clashing with me and him.
Sure. Obviously, this team is like one of the best examples I've ever seen. Right? Like one of the principles I noticed from watching every basically great team in Counter-Strike is usually if you don't get good, like near your peak level, about 3 months into a lineup, usually it's just never going to happen, mate. Because think about it, like 3 months is a lot of scrims. It might be like 4 to 6 tournaments you might have gone to. Like after that point in time, if it hasn't already like peaked, there's usually something really wrong. So one thing that's crazy about your team was, like I said, you had a long period where it wasn't that great, and then suddenly you hit this form at the end of last year where you had the 5 finals in a row, and obviously the EPL one was huge. That was even beating the best teams in the world. Everything was seemingly perfect from the outside in this team. So, like, did you ever lose faith that the lineup would work? Did you ever think maybe roster moves are needed? Like, what happened where it just suddenly came together?
Yeah, like it was basically, I think it was, what tournament was it? The Turkey,
CSGO Asia Championship, wasn't it?
no, it was Turkey when we were like kind of we were facing a decision, and we started at Turkey.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and in that tournament we were basically facing a decision. It was all yet another group stage exit, I think, and yeah, we were faced with a decision, like what do we do from now on? It was basically like a roster change, or as stated earlier, then the other one was changing the roles of inside the team, and we went with with changing the roles, and it did work out. I didn't really have an idea if that was going to work out. Obviously, I didn't really. I'm never like the part of the map control players in the team. Like on the T side, there's like usually 3 players who take map control. Like obviously Karrigan, and then he has like 2 players with him who take map control. So I never really had an idea if that's gonna work because I'm never part of that. But Karrigan thought it might, so I'm happy we got to that decision and it worked out with making any changes. But also, yeah, going to the Asia tournament, the Asian Championships, we were almost losing that tournament.
I think you were on like I think Ty Lue was on like map point for the whole fucking tournament. Like, you would have been out.
It was map points, Walkik 1v3, and
yes,
like going now forward from that, we thought that if Walkik didn't win that clutch, we probably would have went out every other tournament. But I think him winning that clutch, we came back, and then we won the next 2 tournaments also, and also one in January. So it's actually very surreal to think that basically 1 round made our fate, basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, what about this? I don't want to go too much into it, but obviously in the online period, it's been pretty bad for Mousesports. Like, it was basically only recently that things got good, like you were going well. I mean, at the very beginning, in the first ESL Pro League, you did really well. You made the finals. After that, though, it was not just bad, it was really bad. And some of the players in the team, like put it this way, their HLTV profiles were all red. Like, it was pretty bad. Did you ever think in this scenario, like, maybe the whole lineup's going to break apart? I know this is actually the period of time when you re-signed with Mousesports. So where was your head at during this time period where like all the results are just terrible and you're stuck online?
Yeah. So to start with, I think the online period, the start of it at least, it felt like it was a coincidence, us losing. It can happen. Like everyone is playing from home. Everyone's comfortable, and I kept thinking to myself like, okay, I think it's a coincidence. Whatever, let's get the next tournament. We're gonna work hard. We're gonna put in the hours, and we're gonna show that it's just a fluke that we lose like that. But then it kept happening, and then we were like facing some big questions like what's going on, and we couldn't really explain it. To be honest, and we were working really hard. Everyone knew the fact that it might not be the same as being on LAN. Everyone might not have the same motivation, but everyone was still putting in a lot of effort and hours to get out of the slump we were in, and it just didn't seem to come to an end. And yeah, then we were faced with yet another difficult decision, which was to remove Walkik, so we can get basically a fresh start for the team. It was also the time, obviously, when Bimas was signed like as a sixth player, and so we basically just go with him as for the time being. Still, obviously the fact with Bimas is that he's still like the sixth player. He's never meant to be like a permanent replacement. We are still looking for an offer to replace Walkik. That's basically the general idea, was that we just play with Bimas in this current situation we're in, and because the fact that there's no real player available currently on the market that we can replace Walkik with, then we just stick with what we have, and we try to figure out what's possible.
Like I said there, you actually re-signed with the team. Now listen, I'm sure now things are pretty good, but I know a few years ago, Mousesports, the organisation, they're not the biggest esports org in the world. They're a really old one. They've had a lot of success. But I know, like a few years ago, the salaries weren't the highest in the scene. You know, you were just getting okay salaries. And actually, in that 2018 year, as far as I'm concerned, the things I know, I think you were overperforming for where you were at as an org. Like actually, that shouldn't have been a team that was coming, winning tournaments, coming second, top four, etc. So why re-sign with Mouse? Like, why not go and try and join FaZe Clan or go and join some American team? Why not test the rest of the CS world, as it were? Why did you want to stay with Mouse?
Yeah, it was not so much being about with the org. It was more about being together with the lineup we had. Well, when I re-signed, it was still the time when we were number 2 in the world, having won 4 tournaments in a row, and having a very bright future ahead of ourselves, and thinking that we can really make something together. And that was the main storyline why I resigned. I mean, to be honest, then it's just like deja vu. A very similar situation happened in 2018 when we won 2 tournaments, and then the downfall started. Yeah, it's how it goes.
Right, I've got a question which goes like this. Earlier in the interview, you said, like, you know, and I'm a top 10 player in the world. You believe that? You believe you were a top 10 player in the world that year?
In 2019?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't mean what HLTV says. I mean, what do you believe?
Yeah.
You believe it?
Well, in the end of the year, I felt like if the end of the year was the start of the year, I felt like I could have been top 5. Like in the end of the year, I thought I was top 5. But just because what HLTV was saying, obviously, I only started to be as good as I was in the end of the year. But it felt like if I keep up what I did in the end of the year, and I do it throughout the year, I think I can be top 5.
Because I've got sort of detail that people might not have thought of, which is because you came in the team when you were like 17 years old, you were a really inexperienced player, like forget even the age, you hadn't played pro Counter-Strike, you'd just been an FPL player. People still in their brain think you're really young, ropz. But the problem is, mate, you're 20 now. Now, here's the thing. When Simple was 20, he'd already won a bunch of Tier 1 tournaments, being the final of majors. When Nico was 20, he was in fucking FaZe Clan. That was when he had Karrigan. He was like one of like top number 2 player in the world or whatever. So there's no excuses now, mate. You've just got to be the best you can be, right? Can you be a player on that level, you think?
I think I can be, for sure. It obviously also depends what you have surrounding you, but yeah, I mean, actually, it's actually hard to say because I mean, considering I'm like slightly a different player than those guys.
Sure.
I'm obviously in the lurk role, and I know that I get it praised a lot, and people are saying that I'm in probably the best lurker in the world. I think that still shows that it's possible, but I think I need to have the correct surroundings also for that to happen.
Is it something you want though? Do you have like a drive to be thought of as a great player?
No, for sure. Obviously, who doesn't want to be the best player in the world? I've been grinding this year so hard, all throughout the hard times, and I think it has showed that whatever happens, I'm gonna be very great at the game.
Because one of the reasons I ask these questions is it's always tough to know with people who are a bit quieter. And by the way, I know obviously you come from Estonia, and I know like actually some of the cultural overlap between Finland and Estonia. People are just more reserved there. They're not necessarily shy. It's just how they are. You know, they don't let a lot of emotion out necessarily. So it's always tough to know, are people like unsure of themselves, insecure? Are they just, are they just a quiet loner guy? So one of the reasons I ask this is when you made that comment the other day on Twitter where you were explaining to people, because I'm sure you get a million idiots asking you all the time, what's that white thing on your face? Have you got makeup on your face? Like asking that like a million times. You just explained the story, right? And you said like when I was a baby, basically, I had like a hot iron, like what you dry clothes with or whatever. That fell on my face, and so they did a transplant, and obviously the skin was a different color, so that's what made it look different, right? When you said that, is it something you're like insecure about at all? Is it something you worry about? Were you just explaining it? What was the scenario there?
No, there's nothing about being insecure. I mean, obviously, I've accepted the fact that it is what it is. It's been like this so for like 20 years, so I've come to accept it, and it makes me the way I am. It was more about the fact that I saw actually a lot of curiosity, like what it actually is. And I felt like I could give a good explanation, since I haven't really done it before. I think I did it a couple of times in my own stream, maybe last year or so, but obviously that's something that can be archived. So
yeah, sure. Because to me, it's like, I don't think people should be insecure about anything. It's the same, I always tell people this, for example, like, that's what I used to say to the French players, because they were all really insecure about speaking English, right? Because they thought, oh, I'm going to sound stupid. And I always told them, like, mate, you are aware that when a French person speaks with that fucked up French accent in English, everyone thinks it sounds amazing. Like, we all think it's cool as fuck. Shoxy seems like a fucking gangster when he does that. So one of the things I always tell people is, you've got to take what seems like your weakness, and when you become amazing, that will be like a defining factor. Like, here's a great example. Mate, if I show you the way the name Get Right is written, dude, it's stupid as fuck. It's what a little 15-year-old Swedish kid thought looked cool in like 2006 or something, like all the capitalization, the fucking underscore. But here's the thing, if you and me know what Get Right the player was like, that's legendary. That's like, holy shit. Same with Simple's name. Simple's name is whack. What a rubbish alias. But I tell you what, it doesn't seem rubbish now when you know that when you think of the word Simple, you think of all the fucking insane no scopes, dominate the game. Like, I think this could be like a unique element for you, mate. This could be part of your swagger. It's like having a cool scar or something.
Yeah, you definitely got a point there. I agree.
Right, at the end of this interview, do you have any final words or message for anyone?
No, not really. No message.
Okay. Aita.
You're welcome.
This video was kindly supported by Lager15, Pronogo, Mohammed Alabdul Razzaq, Dean Tanglis, Animosity, ErikHillestad, Andreas Kroknes, Hades, Jensen Goh, Zoomba, JDubs, Tobias Bernasconi, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Do you want to ask me a question in one of those monthly AMAs I do? Would you like teasers for who's going to appear next on my content? Or would you even like to take part in one of those crazy donator discussions I do where we go all over the place? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skruilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.